Greetings, mamas and papas. You're here either because you're thinking about offering your kid music lessons or because you've already pulled that trigger and you're looking for ways to improve the odds that your money won't be wasted. Understandable. Much like having children, music lessons are a big, scary investment. And much like children, you won't know for years if they were worth it or not. So let me help you help your kid. Here's a list of things that you can do as a parent to maximize the likelihood of a good outcome. Number 1, have an exit strategy. I know. This seems like a weird place to start. But make sure your child understands 2 things going in. First, it might take quite a while to start seeing results. Second, quitting is an option. It shouldn't be an easy option or a fast one, but your kid needs to know that a graceful exit is available if she ends up hating music lessons. Just knowing that she can quit without crushing your stage mom aspirations will help to frame music lessons more as a voluntary adventure than as an obligation. Number 2, let your kid pick the instrument. You can offer advice, of course, but ultimately the choice is the child's. Show your kid examples of people playing a wide variety of instruments in a wide variety of settings and see what appeals. Context is important here. Seeing a violinist in an orchestra might not be as exciting as seeing one in a rock band, for example. I myself didn't get interested in playing the flute from seeing the London Philharmonic. I got excited about it when I saw this guy. Once you've got a short list of candidates, discuss the pros and cons of each instrument. Is portability important? If so, pianos, organs, and harps are problematic. Is your child small and likely to stay that way? Cross tubas and trombones off your list. Does your child want to sing along while playing the instrument? That rules out all the horns and woodwinds. Do you still want to love your child in 6 months? Drums and bagpipes are probably bad choices. Does your child want to be able to play mostly solo or with other musicians? Guide your kid toward a polyphonic instrument if he's a loner, or a monophonic instrument if he'd prefer to perform in a band or an orchestra. Don't panic, I'll explain that. Polyphonic instruments are those that can play many notes at the same time, like guitars, pianos, and organs. With a polyphonic instrument, you can play a melody while also harmonizing with it, meaning that you can put on quite a show all by yourself. In contrast, monophonic instruments like sax and violins, and trumpets and clarinets, generally play only one note at a time. Players of these instruments need the support of other musicians to achieve harmony. That's why you see them in orchestras and jazz bands, not so much in coffee houses. I've always been an introvert, and I think that's part of the reason I took up piano and guitar as a teenager. They're both polyphonic instruments, so I can play each one all by myself and still sound like a small ensemble. Better still, I can sing while I play them. Most of my friends in high school played monophonic instruments like the violin, the French horn, and the cello. Few of them played their instruments at home for their own enjoyment. They practiced at home, sure, but they got most of the pleasure from playing those instruments in the school orchestra or the marching band. And here's something quite unexpected that I discovered later in life. Nearly everyone I knew who played a monophonic instrument in high school quit cold turkey right after graduation. Whereas nearly everyone I knew who played a polyphonic instrument in high school was still playing it pretty regularly afterwards. Good investment, right? Go into this knowing full well that your child may not take to music in general, or may not enjoy the first instrument she selects. You could pump a lot of money into this project and discover that in the end it produces bupkis. Welcome to parenthood. I bring this up because for reasons I don't quite understand, many parents seem much more averse to risking money on music than they do on their kids' other pursuits, such as sports. So I'm just reminding you that in the same way that your kid may one day shove all that expensive football equipment under the bed and take up swimming, he might also graduate from the piano to the guitar or from oboe to piccolo. Be ready for that and try to be as accepting of the latter as you would the former. Number 3, get your kid a quality instrument. Yes, instruments are expensive. And that's to say nothing of all the strings, reeds, pads, etc. required for their maintenance. So it's tempting to cheap out and tell yourself that you'll get the kid a quality instrument later, after you know whether or not she's going to stick with it. But here's the thing. Cheap instruments are very hard to play, sometimes even physically painful. Do you hate your kid that much? No judgment, just asking. In addition, the money you spend on the instrument is just as risky an investment as the money you spend on lessons. But at least the instrument has resale value. If your kid quits music or simply rebels by not practicing, you're not getting a refund on those lessons. So why be stingy with the instrument? You can always sell it. And I've got great news for you. A quality instrument actually has resale value. A cheap one doesn't. You'll just end up throwing it away, or worse, donating it to someone who's also going to hate it. Number 4, let your kid pick his or her practice area. Personally, I've never liked making mistakes in public, so as a teenager I was happiest practicing in my bedroom. Even today, I have a dedicated room in my house for music. Some kids, however, really crave the company of others and would rather practice in the living room or the den. In my opinion, you don't get a say in this. You're going to have your own agenda. like the desire to kibitz and supervise on the one hand, or on the other, the need for some freaking peace and quiet. But if you're truly invested in giving your kid the gift of music, you need to suck it up and put his needs ahead of yours. Yes, it can be unnerving to listen up close to a squawking clarinet, a shrieking violin, or God forbid, bagpipes. But that's what you signed up for, O creator of small humans. Number 5, negotiate a practice schedule together. It would be great if your child could establish her own practice schedule, but kids simply don't have control over their time. So you're going to have to help schedule your child's practice sessions based on all the other demands of family life. Do what you can, though, to make it seem as if your child is the one calling the shots. That will help her take ownership of practicing and feel some responsibility for it. Do this by sitting down with your child, making a list of all the daily activities, and then showing her the time slots when practice would best fit into those activities. You may need to move some things around, but in the end, try to have 3 or 4 reasonable options and let your kid select from those. We in the teaching biz call that a controlled choice. Resist the urge to save time by finding those options on your own, and then telling your child which one's best. If you want her to feel like part of the process, and you do, then she needs to see how you've come up with these choices. Better yet, she should feel like she helped find them in the first place. In addition to daily practice, I recommend weekly lessons and a time window of at least 6 months with an option to renew for another 6 months if things are going well, or to walk away free and clear if not. In exchange, you agree to pay for the instrument, for the lessons, and to never complain about the noise. Ever. Ever. And in case you're wondering, no, you can't master an instrument or even become proficient on it in 6 months. But in 6 months, you can tell if you like it enough to keep going. An old friend of mine used to say, you can't tell from a first date if a given relationship has potential, but you can usually tell if it doesn't. I think 6 months spent with a musical instrument qualifies as a first date. One last thing about practice schedules. While I'm a big fan of setting start times for practice sessions, I'm not a big fan of setting duration times. In other words, it's fine to expect your kid to begin practice at a specified time each day, all the more important if your family has a tight schedule. But I don't recommend requiring them to practice for a set amount of time each day. It's more valuable and less stressful to focus on goals instead of on time. Your child's teacher should be giving him a variety of assignments, so working on each of those should be the focus of every practice session. For example, you can expect your child to have some finger exercises, some scale or arpeggio work, a little theory, and a couple of songs to practice during each session. Encourage him to concentrate on mastering the skills, not on punching the clock. Number 6, praise your child frequently but strategically. Humans tend to repeat behaviors for which they get rewarded, and verbal praise is a highly valued reward for most people. But researchers have found that we, as social animals, are exquisitely sensitive to the difference between empty flattery and a sincere compliment. In short, we know when we're being bullshitted. So the first rule of praise is, make it specific. Consider the difference between a husband saying to his wife, yeah, honey, you look great, while barely looking up from his phone, versus the guy who slowly and deliberately looks his wife up and down and says, hey girl, that dress is hugging you in all the right places. The same goes for all forms of praise, even in music. There's a world of difference between mumbling, yeah, sweetie, that was great, and looking her in the eye while saying, I really like how expressively you played that slow passage. Or, wow, that was a lot smoother than you played it just a few days ago. Unspecific praise like, hey, that was great, is so generic it could literally be said to anyone about anything. Therefore, it's meaningless at best, and at worst it's dismissive, even patronizing. Your praise needs to be targeted directly at the child, and it needs to describe what you liked about the thing that happened just before you spoke. No exceptions. The second rule of praise is to make it about effort, not about talent. Researchers like Carol Dweck and Angela Duckworth have noted that when you repeatedly tell kids how smart they are or how talented they are, instead of how hard-working they are, they tend to collapse when the going gets tough. The words smart and talented refer to innate ability. Praising kids for innate ability makes them proud of how quickly they catch on and how easily things come to them. And that's okay, I guess, when they're learning how to finger paint or stack blocks. But if you spent your whole childhood being told that your finest quality is that things come easily to you because of how smart you are, guess what happens when you run into something that doesn't fall right into place for you, like algebra or a second language or squeezing a pretty sound out of a bassoon? Time and again, kids who've been praised for being smart and talented quickly surrender at difficult tasks and retreat to the comfort of favorite activities, ones at which they already feel competent. Conversely, kids who've been praised for their perseverance and grit tend not only to stick with difficult tasks for longer periods of time, they also tend to try new things more often. Those are admirable qualities. So what does this mean to you, Tiger Mom? It means that instead of saying things like, "Wow, you're so talented," say, "That sounded complicated. You must have worked really hard to do that." Instead of saying, "Hey champ, you're a natural," say, "I'm really impressed at the effort you put into smoothing out those transitions." And one of my favorites, "Wow, it takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make a performance look that easy." While we're on the subject of praise, don't just praise performances, praise practice sessions. Remember the parent's mantra, praise the behavior that you want repeated. Well, practice is the behavior that you want repeated. And grit or perseverance is the character trait that undergirds practice. Here are a few nice things to say to your kid about practicing. "I admire how you stick to your practice schedule." Or, "I'm impressed by how often you'll repeat the same passage until you're satisfied with it." Or, "Thank you for not bringing shame on the family at your last recital." Just kidding. Don't say that. Number 7, encourage your kid to perform at regular and frequent intervals. Most music teachers hold yearly recitals at which all their students gather to perform for their parents. That's a good thing and you should definitely attend those. But annual performances aren't nearly frequent enough to sustain engagement. Please encourage your child to perform something for the family at least once a month, even if it's just 3 minutes. This not only shows you care, it gives your child short-term targets to shoot for, benchmarks to reach, deadlines. If it's okay with your child, consider inviting friends or other relatives over for some performances. But, and this is critical, instruct all the adults ahead of time to praise effort instead of talent. Number 8, make monthly videos of your child's progress. As I've said many times on this channel, learning music is a race between satisfaction and frustration. It's hard and often tedious work, but even very small successes, if they come frequently enough, can keep your child from getting discouraged by the inevitable plateaus and rough patches. Progress is often so slow that it's nearly impossible to see, so make sure your child has seen undeniable examples of her progress by making monthly videos of it. Do this in a way that your child is comfortable with. You can record discreetly while she's practicing, for instance, or you can record those monthly mini recitals. Save the clips, and then whenever she slumps down in defeat, pull out the videos and show her how much progress she's made. Yeah, she might still be unhappy that she can't play anything yet by Taylor Swift, but you'll probably also be amazed at how much less crappy her arpeggios have become. Number 9, make sure that your kid's teacher is giving your child new challenges every week. It's very easy to stagnate in music. I'm speaking from direct personal experience when I say that once you master a specific skill, it becomes enormously tempting to repeat that comfortable, familiar skill over and over again instead of struggling to earn a new one. And that's an enormous waste of time. If you want your weekly videos to show progress, and you do, then it's crucial that your kid is grappling with a new challenge every week or so. Number 10, do not, under any circumstances, pay your kid to practice. Studies show that humans tend to mentally divide unpleasant tasks into 2 categories. Those we do out of a sense of social obligation, such as cleaning our bedrooms or driving a friend to the airport, and those that we do to earn money, such as cleaning hotel rooms or Ubering strangers to the airport. And it turns out that once you start paying a person for a task that he or she should be doing out of a sense of social obligation, it not only backfires, there's no going back. When I was a kid, my dad taught me how to mow the lawn. And even though I didn't much enjoy it, I shouldered the burden and I took some satisfaction contributing to the running of the household. Then I started cutting the neighbor's lawn for cash. Pretty soon I was cutting the neighbor's lawn as often as I could get away with, but Dad had to nag and threaten me to get me to cut our own grass. Something had changed. Behavioral economists have discovered that this happens with great reliability. Nagging kids to clean their rooms is unpleasant, so a lot of parents try to incentivize the behavior by paying for it. Then they're stunned to discover that the kids clean their rooms even less frequently than before. What's worse, nagging is no longer effective because the kid shrugs and says, "Meh, I don't need the money." What was once a social obligation has become a financial transaction, and according to research, your child will never go back to seeing that task as a social obligation. If you're like me, by the way, and you totally geek out on this kind of research, check out the Freakonomics podcast episode linked below. So how do you know when it's time to throw in the sheet music and let your kid quit? Well, it's really pretty simple. If you have to keep reminding your kid to practice, and if he groans when you do, then honor the contract and let him walk away after 6 months. Seriously, that's it. And if you find yourself shaking your head right now, pushing back against my recommendation, please watch my video titled, "Why You Should Let Your Kid Quit Music." I think you'll find it both eye-opening and convincing. On a related subject, I have been stunned over the years at how many kids who hate practicing nevertheless continue to take lessons, even after their parents have offered to let them quit. Any number of things could be going on here, but the 2 most likely explanations are that your child really likes her teacher, or that she just doesn't want to disappoint you. I don't pretend to know what's going on in your particular kid's mind, but you, dear parent, are under no obligation to cater to it. If you have to nag and threaten him to practice the instrument that you purchased for the lessons you're paying for, then he isn't getting any of the desired benefits from music. And that's a waste. You don't have to flush away family resources just because your kid doesn't know when it's time to quit. As a rule of thumb, anytime you're trying to decide whether or not to keep your child in music lessons, ask yourself what you would do if this were a sport or an extracurricular activity like, say, chess club or pom squad. How long would you make your daughter play soccer or stay on the robotics team if she didn't like it, even if you thought it was good for her? Or how long would you pay for tennis lessons if your son never played tennis, but also insisted that he didn't want to quit tennis lessons? Use those answers to gauge how long you should keep your kid in music lessons that he or she isn't taking seriously. Let me close by suggesting 3 things you can try before giving up on music lessons that your child doesn't seem to be benefiting from. First, try a new teacher. Relationships are paramount to learning, and a cold, unfriendly teacher can easily kill a kid's enthusiasm for any subject, not just music. Conversely, a fun, welcoming teacher can coax miracles out of an otherwise reluctant child. Second, try a new teaching approach. Experiment with online instruction, for instance, instead of a live teacher. Or maybe try group lessons instead of individual lessons. Or perhaps seek out a learn-by-ear system like the Suzuki method, instead of an approach that prioritizes reading music. Finally, and expensively, try a new instrument. Paul McCartney played the guitar before switching to bass. And before Dave Grohl played guitar for the Foo Fighters, he played drums for Nirvana. My parents made me take organ lessons as a kid, which I hated. But then as a teenager, I fell in love with the guitar. And then with the piano after that. Go figure. But only try a new instrument if your kid seems really enthusiastic about one instrument in particular. Don't just go grasping at straws hoping for a different outcome. That will not end well. I hope I've accomplished 2 things with this video. I hope I've given you the tools you need to get the most out of your investment in music lessons. And I also hope I've given you permission to quit without guilt if it ever becomes clear that those lessons aren't going anywhere. If you're still hung up on that second thing, watch my video titled, Why You Should Let Your Kid Quit Music. The link's down below. Speaking of my other videos, I have a whole playlist of them about maximizing progress in music that might also help you help your child. Be sure to check those out. But before you go, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Those are really easy ways to reward the behaviors that you want to see repeated. See you next time.